counterintelligence, and closely related counterterrorism, may well be a source of positive intelligence on the opposition's priorities and thinking, not just a defensive measure. Still, foreign intelligence capability is an important part of early warning. Charles Burton Marshall wrote that his college studies failed to teach him about espionage, the role of intelligence services, or the role of propaganda. States as propensities for leading double lives, having at once forensic and efficient policies, one sought for display, the other to be pursued, were sloughed over. This window into the double lives of states, of which Marshall wrote, is a less familiar dimension of CI work, one that national security decision-makers and scholars alike have largely neglected. Inferred from Marshall's remark, the positive intelligence that counterintelligence may supply, that is, how and to what ends governments use the precious resources that their intelligence services represent, can help inform the underlying national, foreign and defense policy debate. But only if our policy leadership is alert enough to appreciate the value of such insights. She emphasizes that CI is directed not at all hostile actions against one's own countries, but those originated by foreign intelligence services, a term of art that includes transnational and non-national adversaries. Nations have different structure for counterintelligence and counterterrorism organizations. There will usually be separate civilian and military organizations. The civilian side may be split by foreign and domestic responsibilities, or by intelligence versus law enforcement responsibility. Other countries also deal with the proper organization of defenses against this, often with separate services with no common authority below the head of government. The counterterrorism page primarily deals with special police or military organizations that carry out arrest or direct combat with terrorists. This page is intended to deal with the other aspects of counterterrorism: the national authority over it, identification and monitoring of threats, clandestine and covert interference with their internal organization, and warning of planned attacks. A final category is mitigation of incidents, which may be the organization that also deals with major accidents and natural disasters. Australia treats terrorism with a modified law enforcement model, with the Domestic Intelligence Agency authorized to direct the police to make secret arrests and conduct interrogations. Foreign intelligence on terrorist threats. Foreign intelligence is the responsibility of the Australian Secret Intelligence Service. Australia belongs to the Five Powers Defence Arrangement of Australia, Great Britain, New Zealand, Singapore and Malaysia, which appears to be concerned primarily with counter-terrorism. In addition, Australia is a member of the UK-USA Agreement for Sharing Communications Intelligence. Internal Security and Police. The Australian Security Intelligence Organisation is the domestic security agency, which, following the British model, has no police powers. Due to this, it operates closely with the Australian Federal Police or with state and territory police forces. The Australian anti-terrorism legislation 2004 gave ASIO the authority to have police detain suspects without charge to enable their interrogation by ASIO officers, with severe penalties for those who reveal that questioning or detention has taken place. This change generated controversy over the balance between security and civil liberties, as it does in many countries. Criminal justice for terrorists. Belgium. The Prime Minister has direct responsibility for counter-terrorism, with the Council of Ministers setting strategic policy. A ministerial committee on intelligence and security works out detailed policies. Belgium, with due regard to domestic concern about sovereignty, takes a leadership role in European cooperation on terrorism. Principally, counter-terrorism is seen as a police responsibility, coordinated principally by the Ministry of the Interior, with some work in the Ministry of Justice. Either the police or a federal magistrate do investigations. Foreign intelligence on terrorist threats. The Ministry of Justice controls the Civilian Intelligence Agency. The State Security and General Intelligence Service, which may call on the Military Intelligence Service under specific and limited circumstances. Measures to interfere with terrorist organization. 2 organizations are responsible for investigating and preventing the financing of terrorism. The Financial Information Processing Unit, an independent agency supervised by the Finance and Justice Ministries, collects and analyzes financial data about possible terrorist linkages. The Treasury, part of the Federal Public Finance Department, is responsible for freezing assets belonging to terrorists. In addition, Belgium is a member of the International Financial Action Task Force on Money Laundering, a 31-country organization formed by the G7 in 1989 to combat money laundering. Internal security and police anti-terrorism and homeland security intelligence is handled by the Civilian Intelligence Agency, the State Security and General Intelligence Service under the Ministry of Justice. 4 agencies have some anti-terrorism role. The Department of Terrorism and Sex of the Federal Police, responsible mainly for coordinating activities relating to the Turkish Kurd issue, terrorism, and religious sects. The Mixed Anti-Terrorist Group, a small group, supervised by the Justice and Interior Ministries, that collects and analyzes information for the development of policy and legislation. State Security, which handles intelligence and security matters in several areas, including terrorism, proliferation, and organized crime. The Terrorism and Public Order Service of the Federal Police, a deliberately low-profile group of about 40 field staff with wide-ranging responsibilities. Warning and Coordination, a new organization, OCAM, coded as Terrorist Threat Analysis and coordinates intelligence and police activity. Criminal Justice for Terrorists, individual components of Homeland Security, counterterrorism, and emergency management responsibilities are spread throughout the government. Different agencies look at various issues. For example, one group handles threat assessment, while another one is responsible for intelligence gathering, and border control and financial questions are handled by 2 other ministries. Incident mitigation, monitoring and response to major disasters and terrorist incidents is under Governmental Coordination and Crisis Center, part of the Interior Ministry. It is one of 5 divisions of the Interior Ministry along with the General Directorate of Civil Defense. Brazil. Agência Brasileira de Inteligência Canada. Foreign intelligence on terrorist threats. Canada does not maintain a foreign HUMINT function, but has a strong analytic capability in the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, which is also responsible for personnel security clearances. The military is served by the Intelligence Branch. Communications Security Establishment does collect SIGINT, and is Canada's only acknowledged foreign intelligence collection agency beyond the tactical intelligence units of the military. Internal security and police. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police was once the principal counterintelligence agency, but most functions transferred to CSIS. Recently, however, some activities are back in the RCMP Security Service. Incident mitigation. Public Safety Canada is Canada's national emergency management agency, with a counterpart in each province. France, for example, builds its domestic counter-terrorism in a law enforcement framework. Foreign intelligence on terrorist threats. In France, a senior anti-terrorism magistrate is in charge of defense against terrorism. French magistrates have multiple functions that overlap US and UK functions of investigators, prosecutors, and judges. An anti-terrorism magistrate may call upon France's domestic intelligence service Direction de la Surveillance du Territoire, which may work with the Direction générale de la sécurité extérieure, Foreign Intelligence Service. Germany. German authorities rely on intelligence, law enforcement, and judicial prosecution to prevent terrorist acts and to identify and neutralize potential terrorists. Foreign Intelligence on Terrorist Threats. Federal Intelligence Service under the Federal Chancellery and Militärische Abwehrdienst is responsible for strategic-level preparation of military forces against all threats for which they are responsible. Measures to interfere with terrorist organization within the BKA. A financial intelligence unit serves as Germany's central office for tracking money laundering as well as a main contact point with foreign authorities concerning financial crime. In the financial area, new measures against money laundering were announced in October 2001. A new office within the Ministry of the Interior was charged with collecting and analyzing information contained in financial disclosures. Procedures were set up to better enforce asset seizure and forfeiture laws. German authorities were given wider latitude in accessing financial data of terrorist groups. Steps were taken to curb international money laundering and improve bank customer screening procedures. The Federal Criminal Police Office set up an independent unit responsible for the surveillance of suspicious financial flows. Measures to prevent money laundering now include the checking of electronic databases to ensure that banks are properly screening their clients' business relationships and that they are meeting the requirement to set up internal monitoring systems. In seeking to dry up the sources of terrorist financing, recent regulations aim to strengthen Germany's own capabilities, as well as German cooperation with international efforts. Under the oversight of the German Federal Banking Supervisory Office, banks, financial service providers and others must monitor all financial flows for illegal activity. Germany was the first country to implement an EU guideline against money laundering as well as the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force on money laundering. Internal Security and Police. The Federal Bureau for the Protection of the Constitution is given authority to track any activities of extremist groups that seek to foment ideological or religious strife domestically. The Federal Police, also on airline as the most important law enforcement authorities, are the Federal Criminal Police Office and the German Federal Police, both under the Ministry of the Interior and the Federal Public Prosecutor General. Post 9/11, the BKA has the authority to lead its own investigations, replacing the former system which required a formal request from the BFV. Criminal justice for terrorists. The Federal Public Prosecutor General at the Federal Court of Justice is charged with prosecution of terrorist offenses. A criminal senate within the Federal Court of Justice deals with national security measures and is responsible for ruling on complaints of investigative abuse. Under the Court's Constitution Act,